To talk more about the French election now with French politics expert Paul Smith, who joins me from the University of Nottingham. Paul, always great to have you on the show. We just heard Gabriel Attal there lashing out at both the left and the right. How worried is his party now about how it's just going to do in these elections?
I think they're extremely worried. The tactic seems to be, or the strategy seems to be, to attack the left principally at the moment, particularly, as you say, over their economic proposals, and then they'll deal with the far right, the national rally later on. There's a debate next week, as I'm sure you're going to mention, between Attal and Bardella, and also Bompard, the representative of the left. But really, the aim at this point is to try to discredit as far as possible the new Popular Front on its economic policies.
Indeed. And Attal again trying to show that, because today his announcements included a lot of economic measures that his party would put forth, promising things like reduced electricity bills, increases in pensions in line with inflation, no new taxes. Is the economy the most important thing in French voters' minds?
I don't think so. I think that there are. I think that while obviously the French care about the economy, they care about the le pouvoir d'achat, the cost of living. That is a principal concern. I think they feel that there's something else going on here, and that's quite clear from the fact that in many ways it's the government that's struggling to make its voice heard. It's Macron supporters that are really struggling to get their message across.
Paul, Jordan Bardella has also been speaking about the economy, the big representative of the far right. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I want to get back to budgetary sanity. So I've said that our economic plan will have to take the budgetary reality into account. And the situation we will inherit, for which we are not responsible, will force us to make choices and to put in place a schedule.
Paul, Bardella had said he would only be prime minister if it was easy, if he had a majority. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's to some extent to be expected. Otherwise, what would happen if he didn't have an absolute majority? The first opportunity that the opposition had, they would pass a motion of no confidence, and he'd be unable to get any of his policies through. But I think that he's almost sort of preparing himself for a fall. There are lots of different prognoses about the results. Most of them are putting the National Rally at around about 200 seats, but that's still leaving them well away from the 289 they're going to need. So in a sense, he's almost preparing himself for this kind of this rather odd situation where it will be a triumph if they get 200 seats, but not enough of a triumph.
Indeed. And what do you think about the French public's relationship with the far right? I mean, we saw that they were the big winners in the European election a few weeks ago. There was then, though, of course, a big anti-far right protest in France. What does that represent for you? What do indeed French people in general think about the far right?
I think there's a very strong movement, a strong sense amongst some French voters, by no means necessarily the majority, but this is, they're untried, so why not give them a go? And I've heard that expressed by people who I would never have expected to even countenance the idea of voting for the far right. What I think are the really key voters, it seems to me, are those voters who are on the right of the French political spectrum, who've been very divided over the position of people like Éric Ciotti and Les Républicains, who might, in the first or even the second round, on both occasions, vote instead for the far right, who've always been recently been teetering towards that in any case. So I think that there is a very deep division, and it's very difficult for the moderate voice in the centre to be heard in this situation.
You could almost say the same thing on the left. There's this new rebanded coalition, the far left now joined with centre-left parties. Do you think that will create confusion for voters on that side?
I think that there is, yes, I think there's a great deal of confusion amongst left-wing voters. I mean, there are a lot of left-wing voters who still, and left-wing activists who feel quite alienated by particularly the LFI position and Mélenchon's position since the 7th of October and the Hamas attacks on Israel. They found that very difficult to reconcile their views, the sort of moderate left, their views with the more extreme views of LFI. So I think there is a great deal of confusion. And what's actually happening. It's very interesting that we have in France, as we know, these kind of national agreements, but actually what's happening in each constituency is giving us a much more granular, but also very much more confused picture about how people feel about voting for either the new Popular Front or the Rassemblement National, or more importantly for Macron and his potential supporters on the what I will call the moderate right, the sort of liberal Les Républicains.